I want to ask Zane that since it's been 3 years since the end of his last relationship, if he's ready to start another one. And if he would consider me. Zane's phone rang inopportune. And a woman's voice leaked out from the receiver. And I never got that answer. One Zane still accompanied me on my birthday this year. In an open-air couples restaurant. With a specially reserved couples set meal. The night was hazy. Setting off Zane's gentle smiling face. Zane couldn't have failed to see through my little thoughts. But he indulged me. Perhaps it was also a kind of tacit approval. The waiter served the last dessert in the shape of a heart, and Zane handed me an exquisitely wrapped gift box. It was a card camera that I had been longing for a long time. Unfortunately, hadn't fulfilledly. I had been waiting for it for more than half a year since its appraisal, but still hadn't bought it. I didn't know how Zane managed to find such a brand new one. The pure black metal body exuded a soft luster under the warm and dim light. I couldn't help but press the power button. Zane's three-dimensional face appeared in the viewfinder. He was facing the camera. And the lights behind him blurred into a background of starry dots. And his eyes seemed to be filled with starlight. On impulse, I pressed the shutter button to freeze this moment. And the upward curve of my mouth could no longer be hidden. The atmosphere was just right. And everything seemed so natural. I want to ask Zane that since it's been 3 years since the end of his last relationship, if he's ready to start another one. And if he would consider me. Zane's phone rang inopportune. And I never got that answer. A woman's voice faintly leaked from the phone receiver. Zane seemed to instinctively glance at me. Then got up and stood by the fence to answer the call. He held the phone in one hand and ran his other hand through his hair. Which was an instinctive gesture when he was anxious. In just a moment, Zane came back and casually picked up the coat on the back of the chair. Ivy. There's an urgent matter. I have to go to the hospital right away. Zane is a cardiologist. And there are often emergencies in the hospital. So I didn't think too much about it. Then you'd better go. I can go back by myself. I tried to get up. But a sudden pain in my abdomen made me stop. Then be careful on your way back. Zane didn't notice anything wrong with me and left in a hurry with his coat. I thought it was caused by eating something bad. But the abdominal pain gradually intensified at night. And I even started to have a fever and feel nauseous. I finally realized that something was wrong. The first person I thought of was Zane. So I called him. Maybe he was still busy. And no one answered Zane's phone. I gritted my teeth. Bent over holding my stomach. And barely managed to walk to the gate of the community and took a taxi. When I arrived at the hospital emergency room, I tried to call Zane again. This time, it showed that his phone was turned off. Zane's phone was always on 24 hours a day. And there had never been such a situation before. Which made me a little uneasy. The mental tension and physical pain almost drained my strength. And I slid down against the wall. Are you okay? A voice full of concern rang in my ear. And then a pair of strong hands held me up. I looked up. And in front of me was a strange face. He was wearing a mask. And I could only see those clear eyes under the light golden glasses. Leo later talked about the first time he met me. He had just finished an emergency operation. And his spirit relaxed a little. When he walked back to the consulting room. He saw me with a pale face and sweating profusely. And he was really taken aback. After learning that I didn't have any accompanying family members. Leo carried forward the spirit of humanism. Borrowed a stretcher. And pushed me to have an examination. Finally, having fulfilled the diagnosis was acute appendicitis. And I needed to have an operation immediately. What was even more miserable than seeing a doctor alone was having an operation alone. I signed the consent form with trembling hands. Is there really no one to accompany you? Leo frowned slightly, confirming with me again. My parents were in another city. And I didn't have any friends I could bother in the middle of the night. I pursed my lips and thought for a while. And finally dialed that number. It was still turned off. A sense of unease filled my heart. Could something have happened to Zane? And at the moment, I couldn't even take care of myself. On the way to the operating room, I instinctively grabbed the hem of Leo's clothes. The feeling of not being in control of my own body made me feel flustered. Although this young doctor in front of me was a stranger, the kindness he showed was like a source of water for someone who had been walking in the desert for a long time. Leo looked at my hand that was so tightly clenched that it turned white, and he was slightly taken aback. He was always on edge at work, with a focused expression and rarely smiled. Just as I was regretting my overstepping and wanted to pull my hand back, Leo patted my hand gently. "Don't worry. I'm here." His voice had the unique magnetism of a young man. It wasn't deep and mellow, but it was enough to soothe people's hearts. "Don't worry. I'm here." Lying on the operating table, before falling into a coma, Leo said this to me again. With the shadowless lamp behind him, his figure seemed unusually tall. 3 after the anesthesia wore off, I vaguely felt that there were several people standing in the ward and vaguely heard their conversation. "If you had come one step later, the appendix would have perforated, and that would have been troublesome. You were so careless. Leo, I really owe you this time. Sorry to trouble you." Zane let out a low sigh. "Why are you being so polite with me? It's my duty anyway. Not to mention I didn't know she was your friend before." "Zane? Zane?" I opened my eyes with a start. It was already the next morning, and the blinding light made me squint my eyes immediately. Sue was the first to notice that I had woken up. "Wait a minute. Didn't she go abroad 3 years ago? Why is she here?" "I'm sorry, Ivy. I'm only coming to see you now. I had a fever last night." Getting an IV drip was originally a small matter, but Zane insisted on accompanying me when he found out, Sue said, and covered her mouth to cough lightly. She glanced at Zane, with a hint of cocoousness. Zane cleared his throat a little awkwardly and said to me, "I didn't pay attention at first. And then my phone automatically turned off because the battery ran out." There were obvious dark circles under his eyes, and he must have stayed up all night to accompany Sue. Zane came closer, bent slightly in front of my hospital bed, and softened his tone. "Are you feeling better now? What was all this about? Was it out of the concern of a friend?" But that look of concern was inevitably misleading. I even wanted to remind him that Sue was still watching. She stood behind Zane, looking a little haggard, but her natural beauty and delicacy couldn't be hidden, and she looked a bit pitiful. When people are weak, they can't even properly hide their emotions. I could only turn my face to look out the window, and my hand under the quilt kept picking at the bedsheet. Even if I accidentally blinked, tears would almost burst out. I didn't know when Sue came back. When I was worried that something might have happened to Zane, he accompanied Sue all night. No wonder he had that anxious look when he answered the phone. I should have known that only Sue could make him so nervous. So were they planning to get back together? But what right and position did I have to question them? I was glad that I hadn't had the chance to ask that question last night. Otherwise it would have been too embarrassing. "This morning, I heard your phone ring and saw that it was Zane's call. I thought you knew each other. So I informed him." The silent atmosphere was a bit awkward, and Leo timely light and the mood. Only then did I notice Leo standing beside me. He took off his mask, and his features were clear and handsome. He was even younger than I had imagined. "Thank you," I said sincerely to him. Zane still wanted to say something, but Leo pushed him out of the ward. "The patient needs to rest the most now. You'd better go back first." Zane had to give up. Before leaving, he patted Leo on the shoulder. "Looking very familiar, Leo. And I'll trouble you to take good care of Ivy during this time." "Of course." Leo responded quickly, and had already pushed the person out of the ward. He looked in my direction, sighed, and closed the door of the ward with a shake of his head. I should be grateful for his sense of boundaries, leaving me a space to be alone, so that I wouldn't expose my vulnerable side in front of others. For Zane introduced me as his friend. Perhaps there are no more appropriate words to explain the relationship between him and me. It was me who was unwilling. I first met Zane when I was 13 years old. After my mom divorced my dad, she took me back to Yuchang. She took me to meet her best friend and asked me to call her Zane's mom. While Zane's mom was chatting with my mom, I curled up in the corner reading a storybook. The chirping of the cicadas outside the window and a rhythmic click sound of the electric fan blades intertwined into a lullaby. And I leaned against the back of the chair and fell into a deep sleep. In a daze, it seemed that someone walked past me, bringing a cool breeze. Where did this kid come from? It was a hoarse voice belonging to a teenager. The book in my hand fell, and I was startled to my feet. In front of me was a tall and thin teenager. He probably just came back from playing basketball. He was wearing a basketball jersey, and sweat was constantly dripping down his cheeks, some of which fell on the wooden floor. "Yo. Did I wake you up?" The teenager held out the popsicle in his hand in front of me. "Do you want a popsicle?" The changes in my family and the unfamiliar environment made me feel restrained, and I clearly saw that he was about to put that popsicle into his own mouth just now. I looked at him timidly, pursed my lips, and shook my head. "Here. It's never been eaten. You can rest assured." He pushed the popsicle closer to me. If I refused again, it would seem like I was disliking him. I reached out my hand and carefully took it. The teenager smiled at me. His skin was tanned, and his teeth were especially white. His smile was bright, just like the morning breeze. The taste of the popsicle had already become blurred in the distant years, but I will always remember that refreshing feeling that dispelled the sweltering heat. Later, at the dinner table, I learned that the teenager who was 3 years older than me was named Zane. Zane's mom specifically told him, "Ivy will be in the same school as you from now on. You should treat her like your sister and take good care of her." Zane slapped his chest and readily agreed, and he really fulfilled his promise. When I first transferred to the new school, I couldn't integrate into the new environment for a while. I was isolated and teased. And it was Zane who stood up for me. When I sprained my ankle in a PE class, it was Zane who carried me on his back and sent me home. On a rainy day, it was Zane who waited at the door of the classroom and gave me an umbrella. Over the years, I had gotten used to Zane's presence and naively thought that it could go on like this forever. Until the summer vacation of Zane's sophomore year in college. He said he wanted to take me to meet someone. At the noisy train station, I met Sue for the first time. She waved towards us across the crowd. She was tall and slender, with a bright smile. Zane said that Sue was a college classmate who came to visit him, but it was obvious to anyone with eyes that their relationship was more than just that of classmates. The three of us had meals together and watched movies together. He and Sue held hands tightly under the dining table, and they also kissed each other passionately in the dark cinema. Zane introduced me to Sue as his little neighbor sister, but I would rather he forget my existence and go to the appointment alone. I was clearly the redundant one in this three-person date. I felt so embarrassed that I was redundant. I could only chew on the popcorn tasteless lie and stare at the big screen. The movie told the story of a girl's ignorant secret love that started during her adolescence. And in the end, it didn't lead to a happy ending. I was the only one who watched it seriously. I didn't dare to make a sound, afraid of disturbing the other two people, and also afraid of accidentally revealing my restless heart. Sue was Zane's first love. It turned out that the budding of love could make people act silly. He would suddenly laugh when he was explaining a problem to me. And he would also run to the balcony to talk on the phone for an hour in the middle of a meal, completely ignoring the presence of the elders. The summer vacation was too long. Zane finally couldn't resist the longing and went to the city where Sue was. Of course, he didn't take me with him this time. I imagined them dating and holding hands in another city, standing under the thick shade of summer trees and reluctantly kissing goodbye. Then I finally realized that Zane belonged to Sue. They belonged to each other. And one day, Zane would gradually drift apart from me. We couldn't keep getting along like we did when we were children. I still played the role of the little neighbor sister in Zane's life. But I no longer had a reason to bother him too much. I only greeted him occasionally and met him during family gatherings and festivals. Occasionally, I would also see Sue at the gatherings. Zane would introduce her generously as his girlfriend. Their relationship was stable. If there were no accidents, they would stay together, get married, and have children. But something unexpected happened 3 years ago. Sue decided to go abroad, and Zane insisted on staying in his hometown. Neither of them was willing to compromise for the other, and they broke up just like that. Zane went through a period of being down and out. I felt sorry for him, but I didn't feel sorry for him. The breakup only showed that they were not suitable for each other in the end. And Zane, let out a low sigh, of course, would find a more suitable person. There was an empty place by his side, so I took the courage to step forward. I had been by his side all these years. We had never done anything intimate, But we were the closest people to each other. Zane had never had a new girlfriend. Now I finally understood that it was just because he still hadn't let go of Sue. 5 During the time I was in the hospital, Zane came to see me every day. Sometimes alone. And sometimes with Sue. Sue was still on an IV drip. There was no doubt that Zane accompanied her every day. Leo really took good care of me. To help me recover. He would help me go for a walk in the small garden when the weather was good. He said that Zane was his classmate and roommate during his undergraduate years. Since I was Zane's friend, there was no need to be polite with him. His eyes were not deep. In the sunlight, they were closer to light brown. As if they could tolerate everything. Even though we were not very familiar. It was hard to feel a sense of distance from him. I was even willing to share my innermost thoughts with him. It was hard to talk about my emotional experiences. But they would show in my words. Leo wouldn't give any opinions. But I could feel that he was listening carefully. I worked in a psychiatric hospital and quickly returned to work after being discharged from the hospital. Sue came to see me as soon as possible. She made an appointment for my psychological outpatient service as a patient, which surprised me a lot. Just having recovered from a minor illness. She still looked a bit pale and tired. Skipping the greetings between acquaintances. She got straight to the point and told me that she hadn't had an easy time in the past few years abroad. I still often suffer from insomnia and need to rely on medicine to fall asleep. Modern people more or less have psychological problems. I thought she might really just be here to seek psychological counseling. Sue seemed to be struggling to recall. I didn't have anyone to rely on at that time. I often thought that it would be great if Zane could go with me. Or I could just stay with him. Later. I regretted it every day. It was still about Zane. As soon as he was mentioned. I couldn't analyze the situation for her from a professional perspective. But considering the situation of his family back then. His mother. You should know. But I was just stubborn and wanted to give it a try to see where I stood in his heart. Sue covered her face with her hands. Looking painful and sentimental. Later. I also paid the price for my willfulness. I made the wrong choice. I like painting and want to achieve something in it. But in fact, I could do it anywhere. I should have chosen to stay with him. Finally, having fulfilled my psi. She murmured. Sue fell silent. She sank into the soft leather sofa. Looking delicate and helpless. I whirled the pen in my hand. Not knowing whether to give her advice as a doctor or comfort her as an acquaintance. But in the end, I couldn't say a word. My professional knowledge was of no use at all. I couldn't tell her about the dark days Zane had gone through after she left. Except for going to work. He locked himself at home all day long and refused all social interactions. I got the spare key from Zane's mother. Forced my way into his house. Cleaned his room. Cooked for him. And dragged him out to relax. I also couldn't magnanimous comfort her by saying, you see. Even though so much time has passed, Zane still cares about you as much as before. After a long time, Sue seemed to have figured something out. She stood up, adjusted her clothes, grabbed her handbag, and seemed ready to leave. Since I'm back, I still want to give it a try. Maybe there's still a chance for me and him. She looked at me, and a bit of brilliance returned to her eyes. Ivy. Don't you think so? Sue directly asked for my opinion. So I could only nod reluctantly. Yeah. Maybe. I sent her out of the consulting room and suggested that if her insomnia was severe, she should seek early intervention. If necessary, having fulfilled my insatiary, I could introduce an authoritative expert in this field to her. Zane also told me the same thing. Maybe he can accompany me to see a doctor. Sue showed her generous and decent smile again. Thank you. Ivy. 6 I didn't contact Zane or meet him for a long time. I deliberately distanced myself from him and tactfully avoided suspicion. And Zane, let out a low sigh. Who rarely took the initiative to find me before. Might be busy mending his relationship with Sue now. So he wouldn't think of me even more. Looking back on the past 3 years. It was always me who took the initiative. Taking the initiative to greet and contact him. Taking the initiative to meet him. And chattering in front of him about the things I liked and disliked. I even almost confessed my love to him. Without my initiative. The relationship naturally cooled down. Leo, that a low sigh. On the other hand. often contacted me and we met every now and then. We had meals, took walks, and watched movies together. We discovered many common hobbies. As if out of habit, I was always the one being taken care of. Without the doctor-patient relationship, we got along more naturally and easily than before. We talked about a certain movie that I had wanted to watch for a long time, but I couldn't find high-definition resources online. Coincidentally, Leo had a Blu-ray disc that he had treasured for many years. So we made an appointment to watch the movie at my place. We went grocery shopping and cooked together. Leo was wearing a smoke gray sweater and a carton apron. And he was huddled in the small kitchen cooking. Which didn't seem out of place. 2 simple dishes and a soup were placed on the dining table. For someone like me who usually relied on the cafeteria and takeout for 3 meals, it felt like a long-lost warmth. During the meal, Leo answered a phone call. He told me that his relatives back in his hometown had been trying to introduce a girlfriend to him. But I refused. I told them that I already have someone I liked. Leo put down his phone and said it casually. But I couldn't ignore the look he gave me. Although it was brief, it was burning with passion. I pretended to bury my head in my rice and couldn't respond to the warmth in his eyes. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilledly. This topic was quickly passed over. Leo changed the subject, and the atmosphere became relaxed again. After dinner, we sat comfortably on the sofa together. Even though he had seen the movie several times, Leo still stared at the screen intently. Looking at him from the side, his Adam's apple was prominently raised. His jawline was clear, and the changing lights and shadows were reflected on his glasses. He had a faint smell on him, like the lingering aftertaste of pine wood after being burned, which made people feel warm on a winter night. Just enjoy this lazy and casual time. There's no need to worry about what kind of relationship we have now. Just think of it as having an extra friend to accompany me in this city. Just like this. It's also good to never talk about relationships. It was almost midnight when the movie ended. I sent Leo downstairs. I was only wearing a thin coat, and the cold wind of the winter night made me instinctively shrink my neck. Leo took off his scarf and wrapped it around my neck circle by circle. I'll go upstairs soon. For this short while. You'd better wear it yourself. Even though I said that, I didn't take it off. After all, the warmth brought by the scarf was irresistible. I'm young and full of energy. Blowing the cold wind can just help me calm down. Leo walked towards the parking lot and turned back to wave at me dashingly. His tall figure soon disappeared into the night. I turned around and went upstairs. I was still pondering what Leo meant by those words when a figure rushed out of the darkness and grabbed my arm. I let out a scream. I only calmed down after I saw clearly that it was Zane's face. Zane pulled me in front of him and held my shoulders. His face really didn't look good. I came to see you today, but I saw you and Leo entering the building together with shopping bags. I waited downstairs, just wanting to see when he would leave. Zane gritted his teeth. I almost thought he wouldn't leave tonight. But what does this have to do with you? I looked at Zane in a daze. The cold wind blew into my thin coat, making me shiver. He pointed in the direction where Leo had left, a man and a woman alone. How could you let him stay at your place so late? Zane let out a low sigh. What do you mean? Probably because of my scream just now. Leo came back. He stood in front of me and slapped Zane's hand away. They were about the same height, and Leo could look directly at him. I asked you before. And you said that you and Ivy are just friends. So what right do you have to interfere with her? There's no such logic. Zane. Even if she's really in a relationship with me, it has nothing to do with you. Zane was momentarily speechless. Leo had an unrelenting attitude when he was in the right. If you have other thoughts, first ask Ivy if she agrees. And then make it clear to your first love. I promise I'll stay far away and won't bother you anymore. Zane's chest heaved. He couldn't find words to refute for a moment. He gave Leo a bitter look, then turned around angrily, got into the car, slammed the door shut, and drove away. I'm really sorry about today. I tugged at the corners of my mouth, but I couldn't force a smile. Leo still had his back to me and didn't turn around. He dropped his shoulders and let out a sigh. You're not the one who needs to apologize, he said. 7 in the few days after that, I ran into Zane. He was accompanying Sue to see a doctor. They walked towards me. Sue greeted me warmly. Although she was also tall, she looked charming and clingy beside Zane. Zane had been slightly leaning towards Sue, listening to what she was saying. When he saw me, his face darkened. He seemed to have something to say to me. But because Sue was there, he didn't say anything. Later, I often saw Zane's shadow in Sue's WeChat moments. Sometimes it was a hand shown during dinner. Sometimes it was a back view on the street. Or a side profile in front of a desk. The photos didn't show their full faces. But those who were familiar with them could tell who it was at a glance. Sue was expressing her happiness and sweetness in a subtle way. Strangely enough, I wasn't actually in a relationship, but I felt like I had just broken up. Leo couldn't stand my listless appearance. He found a time when we were all free and dragged me to climb a mountain. I found the card camera that Zane gave me in the compartment of my backpack. Now that I held it in my hand, the texture was still the same, but I didn't have that excited feeling anymore. I used it to take many photos of the scenery along the way. On a platform halfway up the mountain, Leo suggested we sit down and take a rest. I looked at the photos one by one. The images were clear, but the color saturation wasn't that high, and the effect was far below my expectations. I listlessly deleted those unsatisfactory photos one by one. I had been longing for this camera before. To some extent, it was because it was hard to get. But one day when it finally belonged to me, I found it was just so, and in the end, it turned into disappointment. When I deleted the last photo, my finger paused on the delete button. Zane's face appeared on the screen. I didn't know if he was looking at the camera or staring at me behind the camera. He had a gentle smile, and his eyes were like stars. "What are you looking at? You're so lost in thought?" Leo stuck a mineral water bottle to my face. The cold temperature made me come back to my senses immediately. I took the mineral water bottle, ignored Leo's triumphant smile from his prank, pressed the power off button, and put the camera back into my bag. Leo must have seen that photo, but he didn't say anything. The steps in the second half of the climb were obviously steeper than before. I struggled to climb, wiped the tip of my nose, and there was already a layer of fine sweat. In contrast, Leo was breathing steadily, as if walking on flat ground. "Look at you. You just don't exercise enough on a regular basis. You should go out and walk more in the future." I wasn't sure if it was a well-intended suggestion or a merciless mockery. I gave him a sidelong glance and continued climbing on my own. Leo quickened his pace and walked a few steps in front of me. Then he turned around to face me and held out his hand. "Let me accompany you to finish the rest of the way," he said. The fiery red setting sun was reflecting off the steady mountain behind him. The words Leo said were unexpectedly solemn. So solemn that one would think he wasn't just talking about the remaining mountain path. The palm in front of me was broad and thick. As long as I put my hand in it, I could feel its warmth, and I wouldn't have to be so tired for the rest of the way. I hesitated for only a moment. In the end, I reached out and quickly slapped Leo's palm. "I can walk by myself." Leo looked at his palm, shook his head, and smiled helplessly. That day was a rare sunny day in winter. We climbed to the top of the mountain side by side. The setting sun hadn't set below the horizon yet. Fresh air filled my lungs, and the vast scenery made me feel more open-minded. An accident occurred on the eve of the new year. After work, I met a patient with schizophrenia in the lobby. He had been hospitalized for a while before and was discharged after his condition improved. He greeted me with a smile. "Hello, Ivy. Are you off work?" "Yes. You look in good spirits. Do you have any discomfort recently?" He seemed so normal that I let down my guard, walked closer to him, and greeted him like an old friend. But suddenly, his expression changed, and his eyes widened. "It's all you people. You want to harm me, hunt me down, and lock me up." As he spoke, he took out a wooden stick from behind him and raised it high. It was like a slow-motion replay. I watched as the wooden stick got closer and closer to me, about to hit my forehead. But my body couldn't react in time. In a flash, a strong force pushed me away. And then I heard a muffled groan in my ear. Leo leaned on my shoulder in pain. It took him a while to recover. And he drew in a sharp breath through his teeth. The patient came to his senses and stood there dumbfounded with the stick in his hand. At a loss. The nearby security guards quickly rushed over and subdued him. Leo had just been waiting for me to get off work. Because of this farce. He had a cracked scapula and needed to recuperate at home for more than a month. Everything was caused by me. Without hesitation. I went to his place whenever I was free to take care of his daily life. On New Year's Eve, my mother and her current husband came from out of town to spend the spring festival with me. Zane's mother invited us to have New Year's Eve dinner together. When I was in college, Zane's father suddenly proposed divorce to Zane's mother. Even though they had been together for most of their lives. Zane's father didn't want to compromise for the remaining time. He admitted that he had met someone who made his heart flutter and was willing to leave the marriage with nothing. Zane's mother had cried and pleaded to keep him. But it was impossible to change his mind. The gentle and smiling Zane's mother seemed to have become a different person. She suffered from depression and even tried to commit suicide in severe cases. Fortunately, hadn't felt my anxiety. Zane discovered it in time. So 3 years ago, it was impossible for Zane to leave with Sue. Zane's mother needed someone to take care of her. And Zane couldn't leave. Zane's mother had visibly lost weight over the years. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilled me. After careful treatment, her mental state was okay. At the dinner table, the topic of the young people's love and marriage inevitably came up. Zane's mother picked up some food and put it in my bowl. Then she looked at Zane and smiled amiably. And he is seeing what Ivy has felt for Zane since she was a child. She reached out and helped me tuck the long hair that had fallen on my chest behind my shoulder. Since you both don't have significant others now, why don't you give it a try and start dating? It was so unexpected that a mouthful of food got stuck in my throat. And my face instantly turned red. I looked at Zane, thinking he would take the initiative to explain something. But he just buried his head in his food and completely ignored us. Look at you. You've learned to be shy at such an age. Zane's mother said with a smile and a hint of reproach. Zane was naive before. I could tell a long time ago that he and that Sue wouldn't last long. Zane's mother was about to continue when Zane finally looked at us. He had a serious expression. Still didn't say anything. And just casually took out 2 pieces of tissue and handed them to me. I finally coughed with the tissue covering my mouth. And it also interrupted Zane's mother in a timely manner. 9 after dinner. I went to the balcony to get some fresh air. When I went to see Leo last time, he said that you've been taking care of him these days. Zane stood behind me and draped the coat in his hand over my shoulders. I struggled but couldn't break free. So I had to let him. Although he got injured because of you. You don't need to take care of him personally like this. Just find a nurse for him. I was so angry at Zane's nonchalant tone that I laughed. So when Sue was sick, didn't you stay by her side all the time? Zane was taken aback for a moment. Then he raised the corners of his mouth. So Ivy, you're still jealous? I used to be deeply in love with Zane's smile like this. Which was handsome with a bit of naughtiness. But now I just felt speechless and didn't know how to break his self-righteousness. After all, Sue and I were together before. Even if there's no more love between us, I can't just abandon her completely. She wants to get back together with me. But I found that I don't have the same feelings for her as I did before. She's holding an art exhibition here. She has no relatives or friends. And her condition isn't very good. After this period of time, I'll make it clear to her. I looked at Zane's serious face and didn't know why he was explaining all this to me. Now Sue is an inescapable responsibility for him. But if Sue still makes him feel the same way as before? Is Zane going to try to get back together with her? If Zane and Sue hadn't broken up 3 years ago, would they still be together now? If there hadn't been that phone call from Sue that night, would Zane have accepted my confession? But there are no what ifs in life. Time is past, and some things have long since changed. No one can go back to the past, but in the final analysis, whether it was in the past or now, Zane has never considered me first. The fireworks in the distance suddenly burst open in the night sky. Gorgeous but fleeting. Midnight was approaching. And this year would finally come to an end. People were eagerly looking forward to a new chapter. I looked at the night sky and suddenly came to my senses at that moment. But why are you telling me all this? No matter what happens between you and Sue in the future, it doesn't seem to have much to do with me. Zane let out a sigh. He still thought I was talking out of anger. Do you remember why you chose to study psychiatry? It was because of my mother. At that time, she was depressed, and you said that by studying this major, you could treat her in the future. He reminisced about the past. Later, every time you had a vacation, you came to my house, chatted with my mother, and tried to cheer her up. You also contributed to my mother's current condition. After you graduated, you refused to go to your mother's place no matter what and insisted on staying in Yuchang. Wasn't it for me? Zane's words made me see the person I used to be, and it only made me feel more sentimental. So you understand all this. But you haven't responded to me all these years. Wasn't it good for us to be like we were before? Can a romantic relationship really last? There are so many examples before us. Like your mother and father. My parents. And also me and Sue. When he said this, Zane's expression turned gloomy. The fireworks kept bursting in the night sky and then quietly fading away. Without the initial amazement, they could also make people feel bored. Don't tell me that you actually fell for me a long time ago, but just didn't want to confirm the relationship with me? I forced a smile. It's just that Leo has made you feel a sense of crisis. You can't stand the fact that the attention that was originally on you has shifted elsewhere. Ivy, do you have to speculate about me like this? Zane turned around and met my gaze. He looked a bit stunned. Why are you looking at me like that? It's as if you're studying your patient. I told Zane that I had just suddenly realized something. I used to think that liking someone was just like that, but now I've found that between people, they can share the same interests, get along comfortably, and have everything responded to. Instead of just unilaterally moving myself. Zane found it incredible. Are you talking about you and Leo? How is that possible? How long have you known each other? Do you know him well enough? The sound of firecrackers resounded through the sky. I didn't answer Zane directly. I just calmly told him. I've realized that I don't like you as much as I used to. I don't know if Zane heard me clearly. He leaned half of his body against the railing of the balcony and didn't move for a long time. I returned the coat to him and then turned around without any hesitation. I suddenly thought of Leo. On this day of reunion, he couldn't go back to his hometown because of his injury. I wonder how he is now. 10 When I rushed to Leo's house, I skillfully pressed the password to open the door, wanting to wish him a Happy New Year. The temperature difference between the inside and outside of the room made my nose suddenly feel sour. Leo was lying on the sofa in the living room, staring at the TV board lie. On the coffee table was an empty instant noodle box and some packaging bags of dry food. The lively chorus of songs came from the TV, making the room seem a bit desolate. Leo didn't expect my sudden visit. He pointed at the coffee table that hadn't been cleaned up yet and looked a bit embarrassed. The hourly maid is on vacation, and the takeout can't be delivered either. I can only make do with it. Hey, why do you look like you're about to cry? Leo panicked. He tried to get up, but it pulled at the wound on his back, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. I pushed him down and sat on the sofa beside him. My chest felt sore, and I lowered my head, unable to speak for a moment. Do you think I look pitiful now? I've heard such a saying. When you think someone is pitiful, love is not far away. Leo used a light tone to make me laugh and observed my reaction. Seeing that I still didn't speak, he changed to a serious tone. I've seen all kinds of patients over the years, and I rarely even feel sympathy anymore. But when I saw you like that day, I suddenly thought you were so pitiful. To comfort a patient, at most I would say, I'll do my best. But when I was facing you that day, I just wanted to tell you, I'm here for you. Later, I thought you were also pitiful in your relationship, even though it wasn't because of me. Leo lowered his eyelids and pretended to be wronged. So do you think I've fallen hopelessly in love with you? I had never seen him like this before, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry for a moment. I want you to have some pity on me too, but I don't need your pity. He pointed to his back. This little injury of mine. You don't need to feel guilty. And don't put any pressure on yourself. If any beautiful lady was in danger, it would be hard for me to just stand by and do nothing. The New Year's countdown from the TV came. 5, 4, 3, hadden fulfilled land session. 2. A new year was really coming. Although the second and the next wouldn't be any different. We still retained this sense of ritual, pinning our beautiful expectations for the future life on it. I looked up at Leo. Then will you wait for me for a while? I didn't know if Leo could understand. I didn't want to use him to get out of the haze. And I didn't want to start a relationship in a confused way. I had to sort myself out and then solemnly accept another person. Leo also looked at me, his eyes shining. Okay. Although I'm still young. Don't make me wait too long. 11 After the new year. My application for further study abroad was approved, which meant that I needed to go to a different place for a year. Before I left, Sue invited me to visit her art exhibition. I was attracted by a painting. It was a single eye. And the overall color was rich. Look at the way it looks at you. So passionate. Sue stood in front of me. She was looking at the painting in front of her, but it seemed as if she was gazing elsewhere. I couldn't understand this kind of abstract art. So I didn't stay in front of that painting for too long. Sue told me that she would leave after the art exhibition. In matters of love, the most painful thing is that two people are not on the same frequency. And once you accidentally miss each other, the feelings fade away. And maybe they have already shifted elsewhere. She looked at the large expanse of green outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. And she seemed calm. During the days away, I was caught up in vistasons and chaos. Leo rarely contacted me, seemingly deliberately giving me enough space. Zane greeted me from time to time, either on behalf of Zane's mother or himself. The topics never went beyond the boundaries. As if I was still the previous little neighbor sister. Only one night, Zane suddenly called me. He had probably just finished a dinner gathering. And his voice was thick with drunkenness. Ivy, do you think if I had confirmed a relationship with you earlier, would you be by my side now? I didn't want to dwell on this unsolvable proposition anymore. Please spare me. Even if we were together, Sue would still come back. I don't want a boyfriend who takes care of his ex-girlfriend. I can't tolerate even the slightest wavering or hesitation from him. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Then Zane's hearty laugh came. You really are something, Ivy. There was a long silence. Just when I thought he had fallen asleep and was about to hang up the phone, Zane mumbled. It was just a little bit. It seems that I really missed my chance. Occasionally, I would think of the old days. Most of the things related to ease and joy were associated with Leo. As the end of the further study period was approaching, I couldn't wait to go back. When the high-speed rail arrived in Yuchang, I looked around. Except for Zane, I didn't see any familiar figure. Zane stopped in front of me, crossed his arms over his chest, and looked at me with a half-smile. Are you that disappointed to see me? I was speechless for a moment. There was an emergency patient at Leo's place, and he couldn't get away for a while, so I had to come instead. Zane took the luggage from my hand, looking a bit helpless. Come on. I'll take you to see him. Extra story 1, the photo. There was a college classmates reunion. After having a good meal and enough to drink, someone suggested taking a group photo, and the class monitor took out his phone. Hey, I have a camera here. Taking a photo with a camera will have a better effect. Leo held up a black card camera. Zane's eyebrows twitched. Wasn't this the camera he had given to Ivy before? After the group photo was taken, a group of people gathered around Leo to look at the photos. They accidentally flipped through too many. Wow. Who took such a handsome photo of you? You're so showy. There's a group photo here too? Who's this beautiful lady? A group of old classmates started to make a fuss. Leo raised his eyebrows slightly and began to proudly introduce his girlfriend. And by the way, he told the legendary story of how they met again. Recently, he had seen Ivy always playing with this camera. He had seen a photo in the camera. He pretended not to care. But the more he pretended, the more itchy he felt. Finally, having fulfilled one sigh, he found an excuse that a group photo was needed for the classmates' reunion and borrowed the camera from Ivy. You can use the camera, but you can't delete any of the photos. Ivy warned him. What kind of photos were so precious that they couldn't be deleted? Leo took the camera and looked through it on the spot. The more he looked, the happier he felt. And he couldn't keep the corners of his mouth from turning up. There were all photos of him. Some of him wearing an apron and cooking in the kitchen. Some of him reading at the desk. And some of him just after taking a shower, loosely tying a bathrobe and revealing his firm pectoral muscles. There were also a few photos where Ivy took a selfie with her face showing and took a photo with his sleeping face when he was sound asleep. She seemed to be playing with the camera casually at ordinary times. But it turned out that she had been recording his daily life. Ivy gave an objective comment. This camera is not good at taking landscapes. But it's quite good at taking portraits. He didn't expect that his girlfriend had the potential to be a photographer. However, he really liked it. At this moment, Zane stood on the outskirts of the crowd, feeling extremely sad. He had spent a lot of money to buy this camera from a scalper back then. But now it was being used to take photos of another man. Ivy was really something. Although he and Leo were still buddies, the other person showed off in front of him from time to time and shamelessly showed their affection every now and then. Even the strongest heart couldn't stand it. Thinking that Leo had invited him to be the best man at his wedding a few days ago, he felt a sense of desolation as a lonely person. He finally made up his mind to follow Zane's mother's arrangement and start his blind date life. He just hoped that he wouldn't be choked to death by the excessive display of affection before he found a significant other. Extra story 2, prenatal education. After getting married, Leo felt that the burden on his shoulders was heavier. And he became even more diligent. He took an on-the-job doctorate degree. One day, he taught the students in the School of Medicine on behalf of his supervisor. During the question and answer session after class, a girl blushed and spoke boldly. Leo is so handsome. I wonder if he has a girlfriend? However, after a while, Zane came back and casually picked up the coat on the back of the chair. Ivy, there's an urgent matter. I have to go to the hospital right away. For on such a rare day when he didn't need to go to the operating table, Leo of course had to seize the opportunity to show off his wedding ring. There was a lot of booing in the classroom. And everyone started gossiping about how Leo and his wife met. So, you should study hard now and master the skills well. Leo cleared his throat and began to talk at length about the legendary experience that had been repeated countless times. It can be said that on the first day I met your teacher's wife, I removed her appendix. After saying this, there was an uproar in the classroom. Some girls teased and said, then don't we have to put on a delicate makeup before going to the hospital? Who knows if we'll meet a handsome doctor like Leo? Leo's self-preservation instinct kicked in instantly. Even if your teacher's wife has no makeup on, she's still the most beautiful in my eyes. He was smug about his perfect answer and looked towards the corner by the window in the last row of the lecture hall. Leo's smile gradually froze, and his expression became extremely gentle. The most beautiful teacher's wife with no makeup on was leaning back in the chair, sleeping soundly with her face up. The loose coat just covered her slightly bulging belly. It was Ivy who insisted on coming to audit the class. Leo was getting busier day by day. Ivy complained that they didn't have enough time to be together. Coming to audit the class could also let the baby get familiar with Daddy's voice and, by the way, receive the edification of knowledge in advance. It was a two birds with one stone thing. Maybe it was a problem left over from her school days. As soon as she saw surgery, she felt sleepy. Coupled with the lack of energy during pregnancy, she didn't know how she had fallen asleep. A ray of the setting sun lazily spread across her face. At this moment, time was peaceful. The end. Author, Ale Wo Chai.